start off, I was just wondering what connection you have with Islam.
Well, my primary area of teaching in the religion department is on Islamic studies, and I also happen to be a Muslim.
All right. And how has that changed the way that you see American media coverage and the current war on terror?
Well, as a scholar of Islam, as someone who has lived and done research in the Islamic world, many different parts of it, and as a Muslim, I find that the way the media describes Islam is often very short-sighted and focuses on the negatives much more so than looking at it much more holistically.
And has that media coverage style changed for Muslims since 9/11?
Well, I don't think that it has changed a lot. Unfortunately, after 9/11 and the launching of the quote-unquote war on terror, and the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan first, Iraq, this has only added to, I think, the coverage of violent attacks within these countries.
So how would you draw the line then between radical Muslims and moderate Muslims? What would you say the main differences are?
Well, first of all, I think that it's very important for the American people to be informed and made to understand that the radical jihadists or terrorists, as we have labeled them, are political movements made up of a very, very tiny percentage of the Muslim populations. And that often, if we're really paying attention, we see that often the targets of these jihadists are other Muslims who do not agree with them, who do not go along with their plans. And so in many ways, Muslims suffer more from the jihadists than people in the West. So it's very important to separate Islam, the religion, from the extremists who are hell-bent on a political agenda.
Well, why do you think that moderate Muslims aren't very vocal, or at least in the media they are not, about speaking out against radical Islam? It's almost like there's radical Islam and then anything else that's not radical Islam kind of falls silent. Why do you think that is? Or maybe
well, first
it's not
of all,
so.
it really isn't that they fall silent. It's that they don't get coverage. Because, unfortunately, for much of our media, the motto is, if it bleeds, it leads. So it's not that people are talking to the moderates, and even though the moderates always issue statements after every attack, often these are not promoted. If at best they may get noticed on a back page of a newspaper, and probably not at all on television or radio coverage.
And you were saying earlier how the quote-unquote war on terror, how we're fighting that in the Middle East. And I was just wondering if you think that that war on terror has now moved and that we are having to fight it within American borders.
Well, first of all, I really think that there isn't this huge internal Muslim jihadist plots or efforts to damage Islam from within.
Well, there have been terrorist groups uncovered and disclosed. One was in Tampa. There is word that there are others across the country, like in Chicago and D.C. and California. And if there is a problem, do you think we're overlooking it, or do you not think that there's a problem at all?
Well, I'm not saying that there aren't some, few people out here who obviously are angry. Possibly their own relatives might have been killed in Iraq or Afghanistan or some other place. So I'm not suggesting that there aren't handfuls of people who would like to carry out some kind of attack internally. But I don't think it's huge, and when you look into these groups, Often they are, really rather pitiful, and are often infiltrated by agents provocateurs who encourage them, who often provide them with the weapons and all. So we have to be very careful about whether or not there is some huge internal threat